Right, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the board of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. We're here in Ebbsfleet. The weather's improved somewhat from this morning's walk up to our offices, so it's, thank you for joining us everyone. Can we start with any, we're recording this, it will be on our website later on. Can we start with any apologies for absence?
Yeah, apologies from Councillor Murphy, and we are expecting Councillor Burdon to join us today.
Great, all right, good. Any declarations of interest other than standard standing declarations that we have, I think, from yourselves from the planning committee?
Yes, standing declaration.
Great. All right, good. Then we have our part one minutes from our meeting on the 2nd of March 2022. Very thorough as always. I assume we've all had a look at those. Are they agreed? Are they a true and fair record of the meeting? Yeah, I'm going to assume that is the case. Then we have our action log, which we appear to be progressing those items which are still open. Is there anything which, Ian, you'd like to particularly focus us on here from the action log?
Just to update you on the first one, Simon, so the letters to the chair of governors of the various schools that we spoke about last time have gone out. They either went out yesterday or they've gone out this morning. So great,
look, excellent. We'll await a response there. Otherwise, can
we give you an update on the second one, Simon?
Yeah, great, absolutely. The Platinum Jubilee, yes.
So just to let you know, we have considered a number of community buildings that might have been suitable for naming, that might have been at sod turning this year. However, none of them are obvious candidates, as we haven't got approval of our funding currently or planning, so we don't feel we should pursue that until we've got more certainty. There is an option of a potential green space that could be a good candidate. However, it's owned by one of our development partners, and we need to kind of progress that discussion with them later on, but we'll pursue that. And we could revisit the community buildings once we have more security around our funding and perhaps know they're going ahead later in the year.
That sounds sensible. The community space, how large is that? What's the nature of that?
There's one of the particularly exciting space that could be launched this year, but it's not in our control, so we need to talk to that developer owner about that opportunity. All
right, so we'll look after them and we'll talk to them and we'll highlight the opportunity, for them as well. Okay, great. Yes, sorry, please.
Before we do, item 4, decision taken not to routinely include BCRs on the investment report. I just wondered why that was. BCR doesn't tell you everything, but it enables you to compare one scheme with another.
Right, Ian, do you want to just talk to that?
Yeah, a couple of reasons, Neil. I mean, you're absolutely right. It doesn't tell you everything, and in fact, it only tells you one part of the overall business case of proposition. I think it particularly doesn't tell you anything about the strategic case. So if you look at some of our perhaps strategically most important business cases and projects, their BCRs will probably be lower than many others. So I think I was particularly concerned and discussed it with Simon that to flag one element of the overall business case in the report without the wider context was, probably creating a slightly false impression of the importance of the investment. I think the other thing to say is that depending on the stage at which the business case is, so when it's at the strategic outline case, I think it was something dangerous to overly rely on BCRs at that very early stage when the detail hasn't been worked through and a lot of analysis hasn't been done. So I was concerned that board members might start to make decisions about the relative merits of investments based on the BCR only without taking into account that sort of wider context.
Particularly concerned, but it seems to me, I think there are 5 elements to the business case. It's not the right thing to do to report on all 5 rather than to specifically omit one on the economic case.
Well, we do obviously when we bring business cases through. There's a comprehensive assessment of each of them. This was very specifically about should we in Julia's investment report, which are updating on general progress on projects on a monthly basis. Should that report have alongside it the, if you like, the last known BCR? So it's that was that. Of course, we would be looking at the all 5 elements in the business case when you consider the business cases, but it was simply for this limited application of the BCR.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's put it this way. I think we'll want officers to be armed with BCRs when we discuss all projects. Yeah, even if it's not in papers. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Neil. Good point. Yeah. All right. And then we have our forward look, which shows the work going on during some of the rest of the year. That then brings us to the Chief Executive's Part 1 report. Ian, would you like to take us through this?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Just a couple of things to add by way of updates to what's in the paper itself. The first is to say that on the 1st of April, the government guidance changed and we're now operating under the Living with COVID-19 plan. What that's meant in terms of our office occupation is that pretty much all restrictions have ended. So we are now making the maximum capacity available. So we've got 30 desks on the ground floor. We've introduced a desk booking system so that we can control the numbers that way coming in. The advice requirement is if you are unwell, do not come into the office. And clearly we're not specifying whether you are unwell with COVID, because people won't be testing routinely, so they won't know necessarily whether they've got COVID. But it simply makes sense, frankly, in managing any viruses or other illness. If you're unwell, don't come into the office. We are retaining, as you the use of sanitizers and wipes, etc. And we've got a general advice to all staff to continue to bear in mind their colleagues' personal health and well-being in terms of managing that, being conscious of distance between people and so on. So, and that's because some people may not be as comfortable being in the environment as everybody else. So just to respect that. The only other thing to say is we're going to develop a more formalised approach to hybrid working, and we've waited until things have stabilised before doing that formally. But at the moment, the requirement is that staff spend around 40% of their time in the office, and that's likely to translate itself into our more formalised approach as well.
Right.
My second update really is on the budget side. So at the time of writing, 4.1 was accurate. We hadn't had confirmation. As of very recently, we've had confirmation of our Ardell settlement for the 3 years of this spending review period, and the settlement is as we requested. So that's an amount of 6 million. Plus, we'll be retaining our receipts as well. So we only per annum, yes. So we only got this news very recently. So about to embark on some budgeting and looking again at how we're using that resource, going back to what we submitted and taking into account any updates. We're still awaiting the confirmation of our capital allocation over and above our current commitments, which we have got approval for, so we're still awaiting that important element, which is obviously going to form our main capital programme for the next 3 years.
All right, Ian, I'm going to bring people in. Thank you for that. Perhaps a couple of quick comments from me before I generally bring people in. Had an opportunity of catching up with the Housing Minister recently over a lunch, and I was very relieved that I did not give him COVID, which I subsequently came down with, but it was great, and he was very interested in everything we're doing here. He's keen to come over and meet with us soon, so that was excellent. In respect of board member recruitment, a very thorough process is ongoing. We have done all the necessary interviews, and recommendations are currently up with the Cabinet Office and number 10, and briefing papers are being prepared to go for the Secretary of State and Ministers. There are recommendations in those draft papers. I'm confident that we will be bringing on 3 excellent new non-executive directors by the mid-year, so very thorough process. I'd like to thank everyone who applied. You were in a very strong field. Thank you for your time in it. I know it's a demanding process, so we will be communicating the outcome of that at the appropriate time, but good progress. And on budgetary allocations, excellent news, as Ian said, about our 3-year revenue settlement, REDL, and our existing commitment, CDEL settlements from the department. I'd like to minute thanks to the department for that, and the Secretary of State. There's a lot going on, but that's great, and we will be progressing the meat of our spending settlement request over the course of the next few weeks. As part of the necessary process the department is doing in respect to Brownfield and Levelling Up. We're confident we will be successful in that endeavour. So are there any other questions, observations for Ian on his report? No? Yes.
Sorry. On the allocation of funds for capital spending, Simon, you mentioned that you're hopeful that we will get an answer within the next few weeks, and I appreciate that the department has a lot to do and it has to decide how to allocate those funds. Does the delay cause any problems with the programme, and does it, this is really a question for Ian, and does it have an effect on the work that we're doing? And if it does, when do we need to know by?
Yeah, shall I start off with that, Ian, and then I'll bring you in there. No, we are going to be writing to the Secretary of State again, copying the Housing Minister, inviting him over here, so he can not only see the work that's been completed in the Garden City, but also can be briefed on our plans for Ebbsfleet Central as we achieve design freeze, application freeze, and we'll be submitting that in the middle of the year. So we're keen to get the Secretary of State and Housing Minister over here. Ian, I'll leave the second part of this to you, but I think we do need to accelerate and highlight anything which is timetable critical, so it doesn't get sort of caught up in a larger kind of approval process for the Brownfield Fund. Ian, over to you.
Yeah. Great question, Neil. So inevitably, because of the way that we've been working on developing the project and our capital programme over the last few years, we've been planning for many of them to be kicking off from the 1st of April, assuming that we would have had a capital allocation. So that's what we've been working to. So any delay is clearly going to involve some delay in virtually every programme. Some of those are much more time critical, as Simon's alluded to, than others. So there are at least, well, probably 3 projects where if we don't aren't able to commit our funding very soon, in a matter of weeks, there is a high risk that project would not go ahead at all. One, because it's linked to planning triggers within a particular planning consent. Another one where a private body has got an allocation of funding from the regulator that needs to be spent. If we don't provide our match, then that'll have an impact. So I'm preparing an email at the moment to go to the department, setting out those particular projects and requesting that they give us an interim settlement effectively to cover those specific ones. These are all projects that the board have seen and approved in terms of the investment. And there's I'm keeping a close eye on how long the business case process for the brownfield land takes, and whether there's a case to be made for looking at the Ebbsfleet funding slightly outside of that process as well. But the immediate thing is to write on these three very time critical projects.
Because if the decision makers, if the department don't know that they're so time critical, they can't prioritise. So I welcome that. About to be sent.
Ian, can we take a step back here, because we have been given assurances by the department that we were going to be considered separately to the Brownfield Fund. So we were not going to have to bid into the Brownfield Fund.
No, so that's absolutely right. But I think our allocation is going to come from the amount of money that was allocated to that activity, if you like, from the Treasury and the spending review. So the 1.8 billion that was announced, our funding is coming from within that. Whilst we won't be bidding into the fund, my understanding is that in terms of the business case for that 1.8 billion, our allocation would be aligned within that. So we won't be bidding into the fund, but we'll be top sliced from the amount of money.
Okay,
but it's within the business case process.
We are not going to be constrained or running through a process, which is the process for the fund, which is administered by Homes England. We will be top slicing the pillar of 1.8 billion. Is that correct?
That's absolutely my understanding, yeah.
I think we should write formally to the department for confirmation of exactly how that the board is requesting this, to understand exactly what the proposal is for the way to deal with our pressing spending review submission, because I do have concerns that if somehow we get wrapped up within a programme fund which is being designed between the department and Homes England, that could be generating something which was a timetable which isn't conducive to what we're trying to do, or a process and scheme arrangements which again are not appropriate for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's good. That's my understanding, Simon. But I think you're right. We will write and get that confirmed.
Can we write to the Secretary of State and copy the Housing Minister on that? I think we have waited quite a while for this, so I think it's time that we start to get some answers. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But we're very grateful for what we have got so far.
Yeah.
More, please. All right, good question. Yeah. Any other questions on that? Great. All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that.
So just one.
Yeah, sorry.
On the communication side, you talk about the launching Ebbsfleet Central at Mitton and the media coverage, or how did the media coverage come out from that? And what is our plans for media coverage when we eventually make our planning application for Ebbsfleet Central? There's Jonathan Friend, who attended the lunch, is in the sort of top 4 journalists in the Evening Standard. So we've got some really good access, and I think of that standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still following up on that. I haven't seen any articles actually produced as a result of that so far, Nick. So we do need to chase them up and see what their proposals are. Obviously,
both of them in the next couple of days, both because of other things in my life, and I think we should really follow up intensely, because I think there's a big article to come out about Ebbsfleet Central in the States Gazette, if we get it right, and that actually the living in Ebbsfleet let alone Ebbsfleet Central. Living in Ebbsfleet should be a focus of the Evening Standard.
Yeah, look, Nick makes a very good point here. And there will be an outline planning application going in during June. So it does feel like there needs to be a common strategy around that, linking into contacts that you've got there. Do you agree with that, Nick?
Yes, I think so. And also I think the broadsheets will get interested in this process, because actually it is in a post-COVID world, or in an endemic world, the quality of life that we have in Ebbsfleet is actually going to be a really attractive thought process, and we should make everybody understand what a garden city means. So I think the FT would be pretty interested as well, which is quite a global thought process now.
Ian, how are we going to manage this?
I agree that the submission of the outline planning application is a key milestone that I think the media are much more likely to latch onto, and as a sort of core part of the story. So we will we've got between now and June, we will be creating the narrative, the story around that, which absolutely needs to build on what you've said, Nick. We are in the process of securing some interim communication resource at the moment, because we don't have a in-house communication resource as of today. But we've got access to resource, and I'm busy securing some internal resource. So we will absolutely make the most of that opportunity. Nick, any help, contacts that we can usefully tap into of yours would be great. We obviously did forge those relationships with the journalists that attended at MIPIM, but there'll be more and others that we can tap into.
Thank you.
So, Nick, I think generally I'd get your contacts excited about generating something around the time that the outline planning application goes in, and let's slot that into our communication resource. Yeah. So thank you for doing that. All right. I think we're done with that. Otherwise, I think your paper is just for noting, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
Which then, Kevin, Ebbsfleet Living, for another busy month. Please talk us through it.
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Chair. I'll just pick out three of the highlights of the month, if that's okay. The first is just to bring your attention to the launch of our latest Life in Ebbsfleet Garden City film. We produce one every 12 to 18 months, really trying to create an archive of what it's like for people moving here, what it's like to live in the Garden City, and some of the key events and things that have happened during that period. Obviously, over the last 18 months, we've had COVID, so a lot of our normal kind of activities and events were limited. However, the film does feature on those windows of opportunity when we had events, how enthusiastic residents of the Garden City were in getting involved. So that was a great part of the film. And also we used the opportunity to feature some of the co-design events that we've been having with the community, getting them involved in helping design our future community buildings, particularly around Alpin and Hub and the Health Wellbeing Hub. So hopefully board members and members of the public can now watch the film. It's on our website and we have links within the paper. There's a 3-minute version for people who are short of enthusiasm over time, and an 8-minute version for those who are slightly more interested. So we're very happy that we continue to create this film. It creates an archive, not just for the people living here, but also for future researchers into what it's been like growing in a new place like ours. The sort of second highlight of the month was our Greening the Garden City Free Tree Giveaway event. Probably our most ambitious community event program to date. We delivered 5 neighbourhood events in 15 days, giving away 2,500 trees and plants. We did an event in every one of our neighbourhoods. Each event was not just giving away trees. We brought lots of local volunteers on board. We brought lots of local entrepreneurs baking cakes with a regal and rock platinum theme. We had people teaching you how to plant trees, how to look after trees. We had the North Kent Countryside Partnership helping as well. And we're really encouraged by the army of volunteers we had to both carry plants and bring them and hand them to people. The community board were really evident in that, and they came forward to all the events. We also had a lot of the local businesses and our partners like Tierra Wimpy Clarion and others who actually attended events and helped residents in that. So it was probably the first really genuine community voluntary event we've had where everybody got involved and literally got their hands dirty planting the trees. So we were really, really pleased with that. Also really pleased that Provender Nurseries, who are a local provider, won that contract to do that, and they again attended every one of the events and give advice to all the local residents. Feedback from residents was exceptionally fantastic for it. They just couldn't believe what a great event it was, and that we were actually giving these trees away free. Lots of people saying it was the first time that they've ever planted anything. Families saying they were going to plant a tree together and watch it grow in the Garden City. So we're really pleased how the events went, and it really kickstarts our kind of approach to the Platinum Jubilee in the Garden City, which we're encouraged by. And finally, the last sort of highlight of the month, just to say we have now really launched our This Must Be the Place, which is a youth-led placemaking program, culture program. We're doing that in partnership with Cement Fields. That's been funded by Arts Council England to the tune of £275,000. So it's really great to see that amount of money coming into working with the youth in the area, which we probably lacked a little bit of connection with. And over the past month alone, over 50 students have been going on tours of the new parks being designed. They've been to look at other similar schemes like Elephant Castle, and they've been to meet the RIBA to sort of start understanding how placemaking is about and how they might want to have future careers in it. So, as you say, quite a busy month for us. Happy to take any questions.
Well done, fantastic. 2,500 trees and bushes, that's an amazing effort. So any questions, board, observations?
I have one general question because I'm enjoying placemaking that you've been undertaking, and I think the tree event was absolutely fantastic. When someone moves into Ebbsfleet, when do we first get into contact with them? Sort of growing the Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, because I've had a lot of people move in and don't really quite understand what we do. And what do you think we could be doing about this sort of Ebbsfleet Garden City moving impact type sort of thing to reach out to? It shouldn't be too stressful, because I'm interested if we deliver 500 or 600, 700 houses being completed in a year. That's not too much for us to keep a track on and actually reach out to individuals to make them understand that they're moving into a community, giving them access to the chat room
It's like a local authority. Welcome, here's some things that would be useful to you, here's links, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, we do it, Kevin. I mean, he probably won't be as upfront as his own work as I will be. Kevin has led through the community board a fantastic project to deliver and put together a really good community pack. It's very, very professional. It covers a whole range of things, not just about vision and history, but also day-to-day advice about getting on in the first 6 months in the community. And he goes to every house, and he goes through. He's made available to developers. It's made available. Yeah, well, no, good question. I mean, frankly, what you highlighted is that perhaps we should have thought about another constituency to receive this, which is board members, because I can assure you that it's gone out. And I think board members did receive a copy of it, didn't they?
We sent a link, but the board was only launched 2 months ago, so. We'll hopefully get some copies for you today to take away, so the board members haven't been here. So we did have it, the people weren't here to collect them. So yeah, that'd be really good to sort of share that with you. Thanks for the endorsement of it, Jeremy. The community board has been fantastic. So it's not just the welcome pack. They've suggested they want a community notice board. So we now have community notice boards in every location, which the community board members hold the key, and they put information up there all the time as well. The Ebbsfleet Living newsletter is going to be published every quarter or every 6 months currently. And that's something that comes through the door to them as well. In terms of the welcome pack, that went to every home 2 months ago. So the 2,500 existing homes got one of those. We then will send it to every home as people move in. So twice a year we'll be doing that. We also have an ambition with the community board to maybe have welcome events in the future. So in the future you kind of have maybe every 3 or 6 months we have a little welcome event where new people can come and meet others. But we did find, for example, at the tree events, that's the first time people came out, we met people. We had the welcome pack available there. We did realise that some people just don't realise it was something they should have read and they throw away. So actually having our people on the ground telling them what it was very, very helpful. And again, EDC staff, after we commended, we did at least a dozen staff at some of those events, volunteering their own time and giving out welcome packs and talking to people. So I do think we do lots of things online, but actually getting out there, meeting people and giving them a physical pack was probably the best thing we've done here. I mean, I think we're not many people with it.
That's great, Kevin. Perhaps that kind of welcome pack could be included within the materials for onboarding our 3 new vets when they join us. I think it's, let's pop that in there. So, good point, well raised. All right, I think your report is for noting. Thank you very much for all your hard work from the team on that. Lara, Skills and Employment Action Plan updates.
Thank you, Chair. So just to recap, at the September 21 board meeting, the approach was agreed to our Skills and Employment Action Plan, and this is the first 6-month update to that plan. So since 2021 September, the importance of skills, employment, education skills has really increased due to the levelling up agenda, and it particularly hits mission 1 about boosting skills, productivity, jobs, living standards, etc. within that levelling up agenda. So I think we are ahead of the curve on that. I was speaking to a couple of officers from local authorities yesterday, and it was something that we were all talking about, and I do feel that we are quite ahead of the curve on that by having our action plan already in place. Collaboratively, I have been working with lots of organisations and stakeholders across both Kent and the South East LEP region, the local authorities, Job Centre Plus, the Careers and Enterprise Company, and yesterday the Greater North Kent Skills Workshop as well. So everything that I do, I try and do as collaboratively as possible to create maximum impact. And, you know, our vision really from all of this is to build the foundations for sustainable inclusive growth in the Gulf of the City and in the surrounding communities, and to enable and prepare all local residents to access current and future employment opportunities. So on that mission, I introduced 4 programmes, and I just wanted to pick out 3 highlights really from the programmes that have been running since September. The first programme was the apprenticeship scheme that was launched in October last year. We appointed a local training provider in the Learning Shop to deliver a 3-day induction programme, and we had 6 apprentices from 5 different employers within the Garden City who attended the induction programme, and they are staying in touch with us through the network. It was designed as a support scheme, and 2 of the apprentices also have assisted at some apprenticeship awareness events at schools for us as well. So that continued engagement is going very well. The second one was within the Work Readiness Programme, and that was a programme called Get Started with Construction that we funded the Prince's Trust to run for us in November last year. Again, we had 14, I think it was, young people who attended that 4-day programme. 11, sorry, get my numbers confused. 11 young people who attended that programme, and from that programme, 4 moved straight into employment, 2 of whom are now permanent employees with Berkeley Modular up in Northfleet as well. And I've actually seen them recently at the factory and said hello, and they're both doing really well. Finally, since January, we have run 2 programmes, attracted Construction Youth Trust to run 2 programmes for us called Building Future Skills. This is aimed at Year 12 and Year 13 students. It's mostly been Year 12 students who have engaged on those programmes. They have a vested interest already in the built environment because they're studying in those areas, and we've had 31 young people who've done 2 programmes, the last of which was here actually at the observatory over 3 days, included lots of EDC staff getting involved, lots of employer engagement, and it's about creating awareness of the huge variety of careers that are available within the built environment. Construction Youth Trust are also working with 10 schools in Dartford and Gravesham Borough, and so far they've engaged with 278 young people. I'm also doing quite a bit myself. I went to a careers fair last week, for example, and it was every single year group from year 7 to year 13, so probably over 2,500 at that one. Finally, this is Academy, which is something that is within the report as well. I have spoken to numerous stakeholders and potential partners about a collaborative skills academy. It's probably going to be quite a long-term ambition. What we want to do is avoid duplication of what's already being delivered locally in terms of training for the built environment. So we're trying to map out between us what training is available, and also then looking to see what funding might be available to bring together a joint construction skills academy somewhere in the local areas. So I've been talking to people like the Lower Thames Crossing, for example, the local authorities, and the various education establishments locally. In terms of lessons learned, the schools have all been really positive. I think there's only 2 schools that I haven't managed to engage with yet, or the Construction Youth Trust haven't managed to engage with across the 2 boroughs. So what I would like to do is use that very strong foundation that we've got with them to build on the programmes that we deliver to create awareness about the career programmes and build this talent pipeline for the future. We've invested a fairly modest amount of money so far, so you know, with a little bit more money we'd be able to create some greater impact. And the same goes for the work readiness programmes again as well. So I'd like to expand on delivery reach and increase the number of people on the work readiness programme so that we feel that immediate need with developers and our partners within the Garden City, people who have the right skills to go onto site right now.
A lot going on, well done. Before I throw this open to the board, is there a kind of a central place on our website which gives case studies, gives an update on what's going on with these different initiatives under a...
Well, under our community section, so we have a community section of the website, although there's quite a lot happens under community, so I think we'll probably be looking at the architecture of the website to see if we can try and make it more accessible. Yeah, can we bring it, because you've got to burrow down and find it. I think this is an important area, so it'd be nice if we could kind of bring it forward, case studies, update, that would be great. If we could do that that would be excellent. I think it's important that you know, we're not shy about the excellent work we're doing here. Board, questions? Yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. I normally frame a really well-structured question, but I'm not going to do that because I can't. If I just throw 2 words at you, phrases at you, home-based businesses and micro-businesses and working from home, where does that fit into this? Because I get the sense out there that because of the way the properties are structured, the market and demography we have, there's probably a lot of people working from home, and that may well not just be hybrid for a company, they might be developing their own little micro businesses. Are they on our radar as well?
Yes, it's the short answer. The longer answer is, in terms of capacity, have not been able to engage with the local supply chain and smaller businesses as of yet. However, with my other hat on around social value, then small to medium-sized enterprises and engaging with the supply chain is 100% embedded into that social value piece of work. So it's on the agenda.
I guess the answer is yes, but would there be merit for us, even the community board, actually looking at maybe setting up a work club or something, just to share experiences, have coffee, share information about accountants and good little business advice and for people who are in the community, so they can talk to each other. That might be something to work together, isn't it?
Yes, please.
We're trying to bring that up.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's quite isolating, isn't it, when you work at home? It's not a bit obvious that
Yes.
can we be in a community, could have got a chance to replicate some of that, you know, that camaraderie.
Yeah.
Just to reinforce, Jeremy, all the community buildings that are involved, because we've done them through co-design, that came out loud and clear as one of the key priorities. So all of the community buildings have got touchdown workspace, and for example, commercial test kitchens in all of the buildings, because there's a lot of entrepreneurial food production people interested.
Yeah.
So you saw some of those fabulous cakes in my report. They're all made by people living in Castle Hill and Springhead and other places who are desperate to start businesses up. So our community buildings are taking a lot of that on account and making sure we make them designed to accommodate.
Chair, can I make a suggestion to you?
Of course,
If it's going to happen, would you be willing for me to designate myself as the responsible board member for cakes? I think that would be really, really helpful, really useful.
Fix
to
them out
get
for us
involved
to
into
get.
that area.
I know you are up to the job, Jeremy, so
It'd be really good. Thank you so much.
let us know that.
Thank you very much.
It's public service.
Is this
We
production,
certainly,
testing, reporting?
Testing mainly testing.
Mainly testing and reporting, monitoring.
Well, if I'm well enough, yeah.
Will it be a regular board paper?
that's good.
We'll need to agree some KPIs.
We will need to.
Yeah. Good, thank you. All right, any other questions?
I think it's brilliant. I think
Yeah.
it's marvellous the thing there.
So what is the dynamic in terms of what are the vacancies? So what is the demand from employers?
It's across the
Trying to-
board. Yeah, all of the different trades, the professional services within the built environment as well, both on a short-term immediate basis, but also longer-term as well. So, you know, just going out with messages around the built environment and careers within it, because there are so many vacancies. I speak quite regularly to Hayes Recruitment as well, who seem to be the local agency who get a phone call from the site manager, I need 6 people tomorrow type of thing. So most of the people who go through the work readiness programmes, I put them in touch with Hayes. So Hayes prioritise them, they know they're local, they know they've done the scheme, the programme with us as well. So that's everything from ground workers, you know, as soon as they've got their CSCS card, they can get out onto site, so we're helping to deliver that. So it really is every single trade and profession within the built environment.
And are you in need in this for the further education and schools?
For an example, at the beginning of the year, of this month, I put on an event specifically for digital construction, because that's one of the growing areas locally. I had local employers, Berkeley Modular and Balfour Beatty, who came, and it was aimed at teachers. So teachers from the local secondary schools came along, listened to what skills are missing so that they could embed those into the curriculum moving forward. And we also had the North Cape College and the University of Greenwich to come along as well to say what the progression paths were within digital construction. So, you know, that was just one tiny sector within the built environment, but I focused on it because I was getting a lot of feedback from people that that was an area that schools perhaps didn't understand how quickly that landscape was changing and what the skills requirements were.
Yes, please.
Very impressive and really encouraging. It must be really encouraging to see people who you've taken on a programme, they're actually working. Factory. It's great. But the question really was, and so that I get an idea of how comprehensive, successful this is. Taking an example, the apprenticeships, you've got 6 apprentices from 5 employers to participate in the 3-day programme. What I was interested in is a feel for whether 6 is a good number, bad number, high, low. Should we be getting more people in those programmes, or is that good? And are the programmes going to be rerun? I just
Yes.
don't have a feel for that.
Yes, so subject to funding, which we now know that we have this week, I'm hoping to put a second cohort of apprentices through that programme, and then another set in the new academic year, because they go by the academic calendar. 6 as a starting point, I was very pleased with. As an organisation, we do have an ambition that 2.5% of the workforce should be apprentices. That's the KCC ambition for all organisations within Kent. So we're reflecting that statistic. We want to do it through carrot rather than stick. So we're talking about social value with developers, contractors, their subcontractors, etc. And you know, I'm a huge ambassador for apprenticeships. So we put on a fair at Ebbsfleet Academy during National Apprenticeship Week in February, and it was all the employers locally who came along and talked about their apprenticeship programmes. So although it's not down to us to sort of employ apprentices, as it were, but then certainly we are encouraging our partners to do so.
So if it's 2.5%,
yeah,
what's the workforce? What's the?
I'm mapping that at the moment, trying to get all of that
And then we get
information back from the developers.
Better idea of how.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell who is achieving that 2.5% figure at the moment until I get the data back from the developers.
But you'll be able to tell us later.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Simon, my
Yes, of course.
point here. Laura's touched on it in her report. I think this is an area of activity where it's incredibly important that we work in partnership with a range of organisations. Having been involved in skills and employment programmes for many years now, it can be quite busy space for organisations to be involved in this. So there tend to be quite a lot of organisations, and sometimes you can almost be competing for the same apprentices, and you just need, it's one area where you really have to work closely in partnership, and Laura's doing that. She's formed strong relationships with exactly the right organisations, but you just have to be careful that you don't start competing for the same the same outputs. There tends to be a fair bit of, there's often a fair bit of money around from different government programs as well for this type of activity, and that can happen. But I say the way to do it is to ensure you're working closely in partnership with a range of organisations.
All right. Well made on that point, Ian. Anything else for Lara? Thank you for all your hard work. Yeah, it's much appreciated. Let's get some more prominence to the outcomes here on our website so people can see it, and perhaps we can also minute thanks to everyone who's partner organisations who are working with us and helping to improve futures and job opportunities for people in the area. That's great, thank you. Mark, Planning and Housing Delivery Report. Over to you.
Thank you, Simon. So, yes,
have we hit our numbers?
We have. That was going to be what I ended with. But, yeah, so the usual update paper from me. The planning committee met last month. The scheme was deferred, so most schemes are approved by the planning committee. Yeah, I think in this instance the feedback from the committee was really around making sure that the design and the landscape information was really sort of fully resolved before the decision was taking place. Really helpful direction from the committee. They were sort of unanimous really in terms of that direction. Since then, officers have been working with the applicants, and I was told yesterday that the scheme looks in a good place to be able to report that back to committee this month. So that will be that will be the other plan for April.
Can I jump in there? Look, I think that's excellent work, because actually in the interviews with incoming NEDs, a question which came up on a number of occasions from them is how we're going about improving design quality and the built environment here. And obviously I was making the distinction between where we get third-party applicants and where we'll be bringing forward our own applications. But I think this is an example of how we're making sure that we ensure that it's high quality, and also that it's crystal clear and transparent about what is going to be delivered at the time of the consenting applications. So well done. Do you have anything to add to this? Neil, you were no doubt at the vanguard of this.
I think Mark and his team were placed in some difficulty because Redrow were insistent that the application be placed before the committee, Matt's application, before it was really ready. And so I hope that by our decision, and it was only to defer, that we sent a signal out that don't ask for determinations until you're ready and until you've got a scheme which officers are satisfied with. And the way that I would like to see this working is that everybody knows that we expect high standards of design, but equally we are also here to facilitate good development. So the way to work is to work with officers, get the design right and put it forward. And we hope that officers will feel empowered to say to developers, if they don't think the design is good enough, it's not good enough, try again. But it would be much better to do that through a collaborative process than through turning down applications. And I think it's working. But
Daniel,
I think
well
I'm
said.
right in saying, Mark, well, I think I picked up, it is the first time the planning committee, the planning committee has deferred an application.
Yeah, previously, any concern the committee would have generally been resolved through conditions or incentives rather than
Yeah. So we were under pressure to agree conditions, and basically, but there was so much that was going to be conditioned, it would effectively have been a whole new planning application. So, because it's only reserved matters. So it's the first time we've deferred, and I hope that message goes out to other developers to reinforce what Neil is saying, which is that the committee is willing to stand up if things aren't in fit state to be properly considered.
Well, again, well said, Daniel, and rest assured that our incoming leads are very focused on this as well. So, and you can see a stiffened result on this. And well done to your team. Mark, carry on.
Yeah, I suppose, and just to add to that, I mean, I haven't picked up in paper, but three schemes within Ebbsfleet have been shortlisted for the Housing Design Awards. So I think there was a greater recognition just in terms of stuff going through it. So yeah, we can provide some updates on that in due course. So yeah, so the usual floor plan for the committee. Listed in the rest of section 2. Yeah, a development sites update. John, I know you were asking a little bit about the heritage sort of information brought through Riverside, so I'll just provide a little bit more information than normal in terms of that particular issue. There hasn't been any update since the paper was written. We're still waiting on the report from the so we're acting on behalf of Belway. So that could be the next key piece of information, where essentially all of the findings and the conclusions, sort of the sort of recommended steps and everything like that. That will then be shared with KCC Heritage and Ebbsfleet. So we will wait to see that comes in.
When are the next planning meetings?
So the next meeting itself, so we're targeting April meeting for the Alcott and South.
And the one after that?
Application. Potentially May. I think the items for May were a little bit looser than the items for
end of May. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are. We're stuck with the committee meetings that being the third Wednesday. So,
okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, of course. On the North Riverside Heritage update, when you had that report, please, I'd like to see a copy of it.
Yes.
I've seen it's quite a controversial thing. And tying in with that, when will the display? I haven't seen it recently, but when will the exclamation board on the bear pit go up? There's a lot of very negative publicity out there on that. There must have been photos I've seen of it. Whilst I understand what it's meant to represent, I'm confused.
Yeah,
it doesn't look good at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was picking up both positive and negative from the community. But I appreciate there's definitely some questions around sort of the interpretation side. We have been pushing Keep. Interestingly, the interpretation board and the content of that does need to be shared, sort of consultation taking place with local heritage groups. So we are pushing key votes that we haven't drafted that so that we can then start to engage with people to understand what needs to be on there. As of this morning, when I spoke to the case officer, that was still an outstanding action with key vote, we'll definitely have pressure on that.
I think you do need a bit more behind that because it really is building up a head of steam of being hinted.
Okay.
And if you lose the people on the journey, you'll never go back.
Yeah.
It looks like a load of squiggly little metal at the moment, and there's got to be more to it than that. And if you don't get the people behind you, you've lost it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll definitely contact Keep again after the meeting. Yeah, that's fine.
It's not script. Either of you have local elections?
No.
Okay. Fine.
In terms of the other things, just on development sites update. So I suppose key submissions: the new primary school at Cable Wharf. And the reserve matters for the Henley building as well. So those are both out to consultation. We've also had an initial discussion with parties interested in looking at the development of the employment side down in Northfleet. So quite a lot of capital in the Gratian patch. We're also expecting actually the second reserve matters for Harbour Village. So that's the Belway scheme. I'm expecting that in any day. And there was an outstanding action that I think Johnny may have flagged a while ago around a bit of open space at Springett Park, and that's what's happened in the last week or so. So yeah, happy to take obviously any questions in terms of development sites. But yeah, section 4, quick update on London resorts. As you can imagine, there was an awful lot of to and froing and various pieces of work that had to take place in advance of the preliminary meeting as was scheduled. But yeah, just a relatively short update from me on there. The only thing that's happened through since the update, myself and the head of planning at Dartford both had a brief conversation with Thurrock on Monday just to try to understand a little bit more about the Greys, sort of the ideas around grazing and regeneration there. But ultimately, the next step would be to await contact from the resorts. And then yeah, section 5. Yeah, so we're at 531. So we have met our business plan number, which is great. I haven't reported any starts, but I did actually drive past the site of Springhead Park yesterday, and they started. We didn't know that, so there were definitely 10 starts there because it's a lot of flats. So we will add those to the numbers for next time. Developers are continuing to be positive, but the narrative around materials, cost of those materials, availability, questions around bricks particularly is coming up time again. But yeah, happy to take any other questions.
Right, well, I did some quick maths. It's obviously fantastic that we've hit our plan, or exceeded our plan numbers there, but you know, I did some quick maths, and of the 531 completions, that's year on year an increase of 150% in the prior year, and starts over 230% increase year on year. So I think it's very commendable what's going on here. Not all about numbers, but it's also about homes. I think what percentage of affordable within that is over 25%?
Yeah, I think we're somewhere between 25 and 30.
Yeah, okay. So that's good work. Nick, and then Jeremy.
Or any other question? Next.
So I think that we were talking about maybe bringing that mixed point back sort of every 6 months or so. So it's definitely on my radar. I'll probably either do that in May or maybe the meeting.
And what's the feedback from our housing partners on the ending of to buy?
Generally, they haven't been flagging it as a particular pressure. Whenever we talk about any sort of concern that they have coming forward, and just in terms of delivery, they generally just refer to sort of materials, sort of labour, supply chain, stuff like that, really, rather than necessarily any enterprise.
What percentage over the last couple of years, last 4 years, 5 years, what percentage do you think have been helped by Ebbsfleet?
It's lower than it was. I remember at one point we were asked this question a few years ago, and the information on the data that we had then indicated that it was quite high. I remember when I looked at this last time, it was getting a little lower. I can try and find some sort of
the value counts to the final year will be having an effect locally, I think. Lower, I think. It's a good question. You'll provide us with some data.
I can see, whenever I get engaged with developers next week, yeah, we can certainly ask that information and see if there's any concern of this. Certainly the numbers for next year are looking strong, so I wouldn't have thought that it would necessarily be something that we're in.
Jeremy. Yeah, thank you. I do understand. I think you're right. The completions and start figures are very promising, but I think we're very wary looking at percentages coming out of pandemic and lockdown, and I think it's all sorts of strange statistical things are happening out there. But I do think it's good.
The question I always use statistics.
Absolutely right. Yeah, when everything's been shut down, down for a year.
Can't believe you don't do that.
Whenever we've been shut down for a year, let's use those statistics. Yeah. The issue I was going to raise is about the planning highlight report. It's one of reputational protection, really. We refer to an area, a sort of sub-area, as being Swanscombe Peninsula, and we report 2 developments in there, Glastonbury and another one.
And Craners Lane.
That's right, Craners Lane. I do understand the peninsula's got 3 sides, and this is the broad end of it, but I think given the issue with regard to London resorts, issues over us reporting housing and residential development in the Swanscombe Peninsula need to be handled extremely carefully, because neither of these are actually peninsula developments, are they? They are effectively at the, they might be north of London Road, but they're certainly south of the peninsula, and I think they fall outside an area that any person would think about as being the peninsula. And I do think we've got to be sensitive going forward, otherwise it's going to look as if we are working on residential on the peninsula. I'm wondering if it might be worth us redesignating that as being London Road or something like that,
that's fine.
just to keep it a bit more clear, and then designating Swanscombe Peninsula as an area where nothing is happening at the moment.
Yeah, sure. I think the original way in which we divided the site was based upon the implementation framework and different areas that are within that, and when that base, I suppose, would fall within that. But I appreciate the issue, so I'll certainly look at the presentation.
What's happened since then, of course, is that the name and nomenclature of Swanscombe Peninsula has been adopted by a particular developer for a particular reason. I think we'll be very careful. So I wonder if we ought to strategically draw from that as a name and go back to London Road or something else.
Okay, I can look at
the
presentation for that next time.
Yes.
London Resort. I notice, Mark, that you say that an application cost is being considered. That's for costs that we've incurred in preparing for a DCO, which is not going to happen because the applicant's withdrawn. No doubt you'll take advice from our professional advisors, but it seems to me that we should be submitting such an application to try and recover our costs because they've been abortive and it's been caused by their decision to withdraw. So that was a observation. And the second point is one of the questions from the public, which James provided us report and draft answers to, was, is the board going to consider what to do in the light of the London Resort withdrawing their application? And as I understand it, London Resort have indicated that they intend to make another application later in the year. So it seems to me that for the moment, we should observe that carefully, we should participate in the process, and we should engage with them to try and find out from them what their proposals are and when they're likely to go ahead. But short of that, if they are going to make another application, I don't think we've got to the stage where we have to start thinking about what else might happen on, if I can use the word, the Swanscombe Peninsula, if they don't go ahead. So it seems to me we need to keep it very much under review and under observation engaged. We don't have to make a strategic decision at the moment, while of course we know that Dartford, through their local plan process, are putting forward policies for the peninsula. But that's
absolutely.
Protection of same.
Yes, I appreciate that. With no London Resort.
With no London Resort,
yeah.
Absolutely.
But that would be the position if people ask, well, what's our reaction to it? Well, Dartford have a reaction already. As I understand it.
Yes. I mean, I know this is a bigger subject. I mean, perhaps it's not. We don't necessarily go to this, but I do think one of the things that we perhaps have a role for. I know you say we await them. I think there are a number of interests in the area which have suffered considerably from the blight delay, and I do think we do have a role to effectively be a voice for them, at least to reflect their concerns and to reflect to those in the planning authority, in this case the government through the planning inspectorate, that actually we would expect those issues not to be reignited. I mean, if you've just been through 10 years of blight, it must be very, very worrying to hear they're coming back with another application. It could all be starting again. And I think we have got a role to perhaps at least go to the planning inspector and say we would expect some consideration to be given of those businesses, small though they are, but they're hugely important and they employ people and they're real people. And I think we have an obligation to make sure they're treated fairly. And I put up with everything that's gone on so far, but I think the notion that they might come back and it might all restart for them, I think would be pretty nightmarish.
But I think that's why we need to engage to find out what's happening so that we can actually do something.
You make a very good point. I met with Dr. Abdullah and their advisors, PwC, last week at the Fleet, which was great to get there, see the stadium and everything.
Building use something productive.
Yeah, and look, we had a good catch up, very, very convivial. We await their next move. They're still busy working away, they tell us. Clearly, we understand the frustration for the local community with this, but I think we just have to sit back and wait for them, what they're going to do next. Daniel.
Neil has raised questions very properly about how BBC as planning authority engages. Can I just ask about any consequences for EDC as landowner, which of course is a separate set of discussions, parallel track? I mean, if we're talking of blight, there's a degree of blight on our land that we have negotiated with them. There are questions of road access to the very generous road access they wanted to their site for visitors coming to the resort. When do we start to pull free from all of this? Or do we have another, like Jeremy said about small businesses, we have to put up another 10 years or so?
Would you like me to come in, Simon?
Yeah, go on in.
So you're absolutely right, Daniel. It's a separate set of considerations for us as the landowner, and fairly consistently with the board's agreement and support. We've, through the process so far, we've raised the issues about the impact of the road in terms of that being mitigated through their proposals, and and seeking to secure that. And the board will remember that they discussed that previously. We could constantly repeat our objection, because a part of the DCO that was submitted requests CPO powers over Ebbsfleet Central, and not all of it, but part of it, and the CPO element does cover the what we're now sort of referring to Ebbsfleet Central East, which is the part that we were discussing the planning application for this morning. So we were going to the preliminary meeting objecting from a landowner perspective to the request for that CPO. We've, throughout the last 12-18 months, we've been making ourselves available to discuss with LRCH how we can remove our objection to CPO by some mutual agreement. We've had virtually no engagement with them on that side, so our objection remains until it's resolved. In terms of the road access itself, there is an option that is that we granted at the time we acquired the freehold of Ebbsfleet Central back to EIGP, who were the owner of the land previous to us. That is time limited, that option. I can't remember the exact date that it expires, but it's got several more years before it does expire. But according to that option, the EIGP can exercise it up until that expiry date.
But it also runs to a triple SI now.
Yes, it does. Yeah, yeah, a separate consideration. Yes, but yeah, there's a legal mechanism which the land could be called for, but as you say, it runs through a triple SI.
Yeah, but I know you want to move on. I don't prolong this, but something I should have mentioned the first time about that strip of land along London Road, because we talk in this board about regenerative opportunities around the place. The truth is, although I had a bit of fun at the Ebbsfleet Football Club's expense, there's no doubt about it, architecturally and in terms of its regenerative effect, it's an extremely good intervention. It's exactly what you need along that main road into us and then along it past the Garden City. It's a great building and a great thing to happen. You'd only have to go 100 yards up the road to find a whole range of workplace and business units that are severely underinvested. And that's one of our big concerns in the Garden City, is how we're going to deliver more jobs, more employment, more great wealth providing places. And it does seem to me there's a role for us there too. And I wonder if we should at least make ourselves available to be part of that solution. I wasn't just suggesting that LRCH deal with that. I wonder whether there's a role for us to actually start to take an interest in bringing forward better opportunities there, because there's no doubt about it. Once you drive past the Ebbsfleet Football Club, which is a really good example of regeneration and use, you then very rapidly hit pretty much a dead zone to be blighted, and I think we've got an obligation there.
Right, this is a point very well made.
I just point out, I think that area of integration.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm talking about from our point of view as a board. We've got. I mean,
Gresham are aware that we're looking at.
All
Good. All right. We'll want to do the best for the community over there. Ultimately, you know, there's nationally significant infrastructure project legislation, and we've got to work within it and see what happens there. All right. So that's your update. Mark, are there any further questions on it? No, that's excellent. Thank you very much. That's for noting. Julia, investment plan update.
Sure. So to get in first, yes, we have bet our numbers. Just to be clear. So in terms of Para 1.2, in terms of capital expenditure, I can definitely confirm it's 17.0 something. I will let Gerard and the internal and external audit team confirm what the 0.0 something is on that. So in terms of capital expenditure, we've definitely met the department's funding budget allocation and a substantial portion of the capital receipts that we have as well. In terms of revenue, we're in a similar situation as well, meeting the department's budget that they allocated to us to bring forward the project. So from my point of view, the team put a huge effort in to the financial year in order to achieve that in terms of where we were. In terms of the update for the individual projects, that's in table 2. And we've also put it as a separate annex now, the individual project progress as well. I think we've talked about a number of the programme level risks. Clearly the SR settlement, whilst we've got the committed projects and we can keep going on those, there will be a point during the year at which we will need to progress those further beyond the commitments we've got at the moment. And we've got other projects which don't fall into that category. We will be doing some work to try and mitigate that impact even further, because clearly not knowing your settlement in the first quarter then delays your overall programme. But we will try and minimise that as far as we can and claw back as much time once we get an allocation.
Julie, can you, obviously, because we've had confirmation of our CDEL, which is committed
yeah.
for 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25.
Yeah.
Are you able, off the top of your head, to give us an idea of the quantum of those sums?
It's about 25 million in total.
Yes.
Across the 3 years?
Yes.
6,
Yeah.
9, 10.
6, 9, 10.
Thank you, my colleagues.
And that, well,
It was the
mathematical
one
genius is 25, yeah.
Yeah, it was the one table I didn't have up.
So 6, 9, 10. So that's what we've got confirmed so far, but obviously the spending review bid open above that is what we will be advancing with the department.
Yes.
Yeah, and those numbers are against very specific commitments.
Yeah.
So
that's about.
Do you want to talk us through what those commitments are? Just give us a flavour for those.
So we've got Ebbsfleet Central Phase 1, Blue Lake pre-construction, Grove Road, the business case as far as we've got, Fast Track, the tunnel, Green Corridors 2, Green Corridors 3, Smart Transport, finalising Swansea Bridge, and we've got some additional funding in there for electricity. So those are all the projects which are within that committee approach.
So we've got the main course to focus on, but certainly
not the next
Redhill and Seedhill, you know,
Yeah.
is significant settlement for us to advance the work that's going on.
We continue to mitigate the time programme implication from third-party approvals. We're trying to work a lot with third-party statutory agencies who need to get approvals. It's not an easy process, but we will continue to work both at a senior level with Ian, Mark and myself, and at an officer level as well. Mark talked about construction supplies and resources. That continues to be a key issue across the network that we look to. I think also we will look at it was not going to go away in the long term. I think now, because obviously there will be significant rebuilding efforts in Ukraine when we get to that stage. And that's a global material supply from that point. So I think it's a long-term thing that we're working with our contractors to mitigate that impact and look at how the materials we use to build. So I think I just wanted to flag that to you. I did notice I did make one error, which is on para 6.2, the last line. There hasn't been an LTI, that should be a 0, but that was damage to a fence within Blue Lake, and that's been repaired. That was my error. I put a 1 in. So from there, so I'm quite happy. If there's any specific projects you'd like to talk about, ask questions, I'd be quite happy to answer any questions.
Julia, thank you very much for this as always. Any questions? Board? No? All right, that's great. Thank you very much for the update. That's excellent. That then will bring us on to, and that's Julie for noting, that will then bring us on to Finance and Operations Report. Gerard.
Thank you, Chair. On the revenue side, we have unaudited, obviously, as we haven't had the audit carried out yet, but our estimate is that we've virtually hit the nail on the numbers side. We had agreed with the department that we could carry over 650,000 because of the delay to the LRCH process. We think we just got a small underspend against that. The details are on Annex A. The LRCH decision does mean, as we've mentioned about this, cost claim, so we need to work through with our auditors the implications of which year we recognise that potentially that money coming back. So we need to work through the implications of that. Julia's mentioned the capital spend. I just mentioned at sort of 3.4. We've spent about 5 million on the sites that we own. As part of the accounting process that we go through, we sort of add that to the asset value that we held last year in our balance sheet. And then we carry out an annual year-end exercise to value the sites. And that is likely, unfortunately, the sort of 5 million that we've spent this year on progressing our sites and how we want to regenerate them. It's probably unlikely to have added much value. So we add it on and then we have to unfortunately take it off. So that's to be written down. So that's just part of the regeneration accounting process. So the annual report and accounts will come out much later in the year. We have to wait for the pension numbers. They don't become available until about the autumn. So that will become a public document at some point, but unfortunately be much later in the year due to that pension delay. But section 4 just mentioned some staffing that's going on, and section 5, Simon's already mentioned about the NED recruitment. So.
Great, good. It's good to hit our numbers. So, any comments, observations? No, that's Julie for noting. Thank you, Gerard. I think then we had, as always, some excellent questions from members of the public. The responses will be published on our website. Keep them coming. Good to keep holders to account. Make sure we make transparent decisions and you get the queries you have answered. So thank you very much for that. I think that then brings us to the end of part 1 of our board meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.